Hi, this is Tom Bronson, and welcome to the Maximize Business Value webinar series, a series of educational webinars for business owners who are passionate about building long-term sustainable value in your business. Today, we're talking about how to build a culture of sustainable results in your business. Have you ever wondered if what it would feel like if you had a steroid shot in the arm to increase your productivity? Well, today, that's what we're going to talk about. This is volume 8 in our series. So far, we've attacked things that you can do in finance and operations, human resources, marketing, sales, tax credits, and building the ultimate transition team. If you missed any one of those webinars, you can check out the replays of all of our webinars on our YouTube channel, which is called Maximize Business Value. By the way, if you go to the channel and you click click on one of them and you like it, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and you'll be notified every time that we have something new that gets posted. Of course, I'm Tom Bronson, president of Mastery Partners, and I'm thrilled to be joined today by David Wible and Wil Chufo. They're founders of Work.Software. I think the name of their company is Plan, Grind, Deliver, or something like that. So, but it is Work.Software. David and I shared the stage at various conferences through the years, and he sold his business, Industry Weapon, around the same time that I sold my last business. After the sale of their business, David and Wil joined forces to form Work.Software, Work.Software. It's a product that promises to change the landscape of productivity, accountability, and results. So welcome to the Maximize Business Value webinar. Gentlemen, good to have you with us today.
Wow, thanks.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Before we get started with your presentation, what I want to do is just remind folks why we're here. So why we do this webinar series. 72% of all business owners have no exit strategy at all. And 48% of business owners who want to sell their business right now have no exit strategy. And that's part of the reason that 83% of attempted transactions never reach the finish line. Now, our team at Mastery Partners have a combined 500 successful business transitions, and we're here to help every step of the way to help every business owner get into that elusive, what we call the 17% club, the group of business owners that can actually transition their business on their terms. Now, I've been in the 17% club multiple times, and I believe that David has as well. It takes a lot of work to get there, and this cool software that we're going to show you today will help you actually get there a little bit further. We always start with the same question. Do you know the value of your business? And if you do know the value of your business, is this how it makes you feel? Do you feel like I'm ready to go sell the business, grab a margarita and head out to the beach? Or when you think about the value of your business, is this more what it makes you feel like? Most business owners, this is probably the reality. So today we're going to talk about solving some of the most prolific problems that business owners face in their business. What are they? Sustainable growth, employee performance, and breaking down silos. Now, David and Wil have developed a system and a product to drive all three of these. And I am thrilled to turn this over to David, who's going to walk you through a little bit of their story and why the need for this. And then Wil is going to walk you through a little bit of the software. So David, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to let you share your screen. Awesome. And take it from there.
Wow, thanks, Tom. That was great. And yeah, so Wil and I had a business prior to Work.Software together. It was called Industry Weapon. We sold it to private equity. We sold it without an investment banker, and we sold it higher than what the letter of intent was. And we believe a lot of that happened because of this framework that we developed over the years that we call the action-based framework. I always say that people need to know their superpowers, and mine happen to be thinking, drawing, and talking. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw out the framework for you. and kind of walk you through the building blocks. And then, as Tom said, we'll give you a peek at a platform that we built to support this framework. So real quick, I call this the action-based framework. And the action-based framework is really has three key components to it. They're very simplistic, but when we start to dig into them, you'll start to probably feel the complexity just by being business owners yourself. I always say that this system, because it focuses on action, is also a communication accountability tool. And so the first main piece to the system is really around, something happened there. Hang on one second. So the first thing that we need to do as leaders of our organization is really define the goals of the business. I find a lot of times, we're reluctant to share all the numbers in the business, but it's really, really important that we understand how to keep score. And more importantly, that our team understands how well the business is doing. And what I find at times is a lot of the employees don't really understand some of the key metrics in the business. And over time, we get kind of cutesy with those metrics. So we believe that there's really 4 core metrics to really playing the game of business. The first one, depending on where you are in your business growth, is cash flow. So we need to make sure that we have enough capital in the business to get the business going. The second one is profit. We want to make sure that our business model over time is going to return, a good return for the investors of the business. And then finally, it's all about revenue. Now, what's neat is for us, there's a 4th metric. And over time, when you master these 3 and you see them consistently growing up and to the right, I was having trouble in my business explaining to my employees why certain purchase orders got me excited versus other purchase orders. And so I came up with this last metric, which really helped us in explaining what types of revenue we wanted our employees to go after. And we basically call it the value creation revenue, or we call it VCR for short. VCR is that revenue stream that is actually going to be driving the core value in your business. My last business, Wil and I, had a software as a service business. So we got very excited because we knew that when we would sell someday, that the acquirer would pay a multiple of our top line revenue, but only the revenue coming from our subscription revenue or our monthly reoccurring revenue. And so we needed a way to communicate to our employees that not all revenue streams were equal. And it was tough at times. They'd bring hardware sales, they would bring professional services, but if they brought MRR, we got super excited. So it's really, really important that your employees understand what revenue streams are most valuable to you. If you're selling for a multiple of EBITDA, there's going to be certain revenue streams that are going to drive more value to the bottom line to get your EBITDA number where it needs to be in order to exit. So this gives you the ability to not have to be a complete open book on your finances. It also is a great way to show people who really don't care so much about financial figures to understand how to keep score in the game of business. We also believe in our system that looking at these numbers every day is probably not the best. As an organization, we want to review them quarterly. The next key pillar in this system is all around accountability. And when we talk accountability, we're talking about the collision between the manager and the employee. So many companies do an annual employee evaluation, which typically is a compensation review. It's some compliance things that you need to go over. And we've all been in those companies where those reports that we need to fill out are 5 pages of worthless questions that really get us no closer to the relationship between the manager and the employee. It's just a guarded conversation where the employee is trying to get paid more and the manager is trying to reduce how much they're going to have to pay that employee. And so what we do in our system is we actually provide a survey that we send to the manager and the employee monthly. And so what we're trying to do is create a deeper conversation between that employee and the manager. We call this survey a map, and it asks 3 specific questions to the employee and the same questions to the manager about the employee. And that is, on a scale from 0 to 9, how do you rank the employee's mindset, ability, and past performance? And really what we're trying to do here is we're trying to not have a manager that does the flyby monthly evaluation where they zip past the employee's desk and say, good job, keep it up, and out the door they go. So we're asking these questions to get a conversation going so that we can dig into how well the employee is actually doing. In that same meeting, we're also delivering what we call an individual impact plan. This allows us to put some guideposts around the answer in regards to how well did the employee perform. We want a real way, a standardized way across the organization on how we show the employee how their career lines up to the actual goals of the business. And so in the impact plan, we need a metric. And so it's going to be the employee's true north metric. We're going to tie this to an application in the business so that we create a report that the manager and the employee can reference on a regular basis. So ideally, at the end of the day, the employee's either high-fiving themselves or giving themselves a swift kick in the butt because they know their metric is off and they need to pick it up. In that meeting, we're also going to require the manager to create some coaching and be able to explain to the employee some of the actions that they can take in order to positively affect that metric. We also want to make sure that the actions aren't tied to somebody else's performance in the business. We really want to make sure that the metric gives the employee full flexibility to be able to execute that metric. And the last and most important is this metric needs to be relevant to the business. And by relevant, what I mean is it has to tie back to one of the 4 goals in how we keep score in business. The reason this is really important is you want to show every employee they're an asset in the organization. This also requires a manager to be a manager, right? So if they answer, I can't figure out how my employee ties to the relevance of the business, the next question is most likely going to be, why do we even have the employee in the first place? Or let's dig a little deeper and come up with an impact plan that's actually going to drive the core goals of the business. So every employee, regardless of their title, has to be driving down costs or driving up revenue. And we need to be able to articulate and show them that value. So then the last piece is, okay, now we know how to keep score in business. Now we know how to share the numbers with all the employees so they understand how well we're doing. We now know every employee's ability and how they actually contribute to the business. But how do we get the departments to all of a sudden maximize their potential with the team that they have in front of them? So the last piece is called strategy. And not unlike a sports team, in our strategies, we create playbooks for every department. And so every department manager is required to keep track of their playbook. Inside that playbook are the strategies in which the department is going to deploy their core deliverables for the business. So inside here are what we call plays. And the value of plays is on a daily basis, we want to make certain that every employee has crystal clear visibility to how to execute the job that they need to do. So every play describes the what and why we're doing something, any of the blind spots that the employee has in regards to getting it done, and then how to transition that particular process to the next process in its lineup. Now, what's neat about this and what really helped us as an organization is when you're talking about that individual impact plan, a lot of times the month that you're having that tough conversation with the employee where they didn't hit their individual impact plan, they're going to reference that they don't know how to do something. And this is the key opportunity to either create a play or do what we call a spiral evaluation into the play that you've already defined. And that is, we got to go a little deeper in the play so that the employee is crystal clear how to actually do their job. So there's no excuses on why I can't hit my metrics, because every play is defined based on the blind spots that the employees have communicated. The daily referencing of the plays gives employees the ability to not have to go to a manager on a regular basis. So we're giving time back to the manager, but we're also giving the employee the ability to execute as quickly and as good as they possibly can. Now, obviously, with these daily play reviews, there's going to be comments made by the employees in regards to things that they're not clear about still. That sets us up to have more relevant weekly meetings. And again, helping a manager be a better manager. So any of the comments that are made in the plays are addressed in the weekly stand-up now. So you don't have a weekly stand-up where you go around the room asking people how's their day. Your weekly review is all about how to make your strategy of executing your department better, how to make certain that the plays in your playbook are in lockstep with maximizing the output of the department. So that's the core. That is exactly how we actually executed it in our last business. And this is how we made certain that everybody was in the boat rowing in the same direction. Now, I don't care how great of a business person you are. The issue with this particular process is over time, you're going to have a bad month. You're going to fall off the wagon. So what do you do? So that's where Wil and I decided when we sold the last business to create a platform that created guideposts and notifications and help people execute an action-based framework so they can be more successful in their business. So what's neat about Work.Software is every employee in the system, based on their attendance to their weekly stand-ups, based on their comments in their plays and their ability to hit their impact plans, they get a grade. And we want to see everybody constantly having great grades in the system and the company consistently moving up and to the right in regards to the quarterly goals. Every department now also gets a grade. And what's awesome about that is now managers have a concrete way of being measured. They don't actually get, their grades don't contribute to their department grade. Their employees' grades contribute to the department grade. So it really requires a manager to be that coach, be that guiding light for their people. The manager's performance goes to his manager's department grade. Finally, we add these two pieces up for the entire organization, and we create something that we call the growth creation score. I know we have some folks here that work a lot in M&A. The growth creation score has been awesome for us, specifically for leaders in organizations to pinpoint the blind spots of their business and be able to quickly remedy that. For our business, it gave us the ability to always stay ahead of the financials. So we would see where an area was falling down. We would provide the necessary tools to fix it. We never had a down month or a down quarter when it came to our cash, our profit, or our revenue. And if you think about that, we ran our company for over a decade. That's a pretty crazy statistic when you think about it. But when you're able to leverage action and see the problem areas of the business, it makes it so much simpler to be able to execute. And by, again, having that communication accountability in place in your business, it gives you a lot of upward mobility when it comes to being able to get to an exit, as well as be able to articulate to the buyer every process and procedure in your business. I had 678 requests that came through my business with auditors that were assigned by the private equity company that bought us. We gave them a play for every request, which is why we believe that we sold higher than what we did. Now, Wil will tell you too, we believe that this system will help a lot of things that we could have done a hell of a lot better in our business. The biggest one was time to exit. We feel like this tool, the way it's designed today, will actually help you minimize the time it takes you to get to an exit and help you articulate to your employees how their career trajectory can stay with the business, because you've shown not only the leaders in the organization, but the new buyer why they're valuable to the organization. So I promise I'm not asking questions. I'm turning this over to Wil.
Thanks, Dave. I'll take it from there. So when we talk work software, the system's broken down into a series of different user roles. And the first role we'll cover is your personal role or your employee role. So this is an individual who has no managerial responsibilities, but it is a department member. So the first thing you see as an employee is your personal grade, your rank in your department, your rank in the company, and you have access to the current GCS score. My individual responsibility in work software as an employee or a personal view is to manage my playbook. So I have access to a series of plays that have been assigned to me or created by me that help me execute my job without seeking additional information from my manager. Monthly, my responsibility comes into my map, like Dave mentioned. Oh, sorry, wrong one. Dave mentioned it's 3 quick questions. How's my mindset, ability, and performance? These are introduced to the employee 7 business days before the end of the month, so they have an opportunity to create their map and have their counter map completed by their manager. My playbook, and we'll take a peek at one of these. I'll look at my closed won deal. Again, the idea around these is a spiral evaluation. So we set kind of a blueprint of what the play ultimately will become when we kick off a play. And I may work my play individually throughout the day, and I'm looking at my steps. If I need to drill in, I can see what my steps actually are. If I need to make any shortcomings in my thought of how the play needs to be done. But if there's an issue, this is where we get a little creative, is we can actually jump in, pick my step, and I can suggest how I want this changed. And I can send a note to my manager on why I think that needs to be done. That suggestion then will create an agenda item for us to review next time we meet. As the owner of the play, I can jump in and I can accept the change, I can modify the change, and I can reject the change. And these historically are all kept along with the play, and they become items within your weekly sync. So you actually can have access to them to review why we made the changes in real time, or discuss them during that meeting to actually discuss whether we want to make the change or reject it as a whole. As we move upstream, we take a look at department view. So this becomes a manager's dashboard. And I can look in here, and this is my department, and I can see my current grade is a C. I can look down here at my people and my playbook scores. The first thing I'm doing is going to jump into my people and see what's driving my grade currently. And I can see here, we had a fairly insufficient person last month, and we can look at what we did with their maps. We can hop in and see their self-assessment and my managerial assessment of where we were. And then we jumped into the impact plan. So once we had an opportunity to discuss those, we talk about what we're going to do to make that better in the next month. So if I look at the submitted impact plan, we can see here what we're targeting is an additional pay-per-click campaigns. We're doing the reporting in HubSpot. Here's a play to actually support that work. What are we doing to affect it? We have our notes there. And what relevancy is this to the business? So this is directly targeting revenue. The other big component when we look at the department score is our playbook activity. So you can see I had a C, so we looked in and we said, okay, we have our employee issue, but what else is driving our score down? Well, we have a series of plays that become stagnant. So we have 4 that are modified and 4 that were deleted. That, along with new plays, have the most positive impact on your playbook score. Reviewing your play without making changes has a positive impact, but not nearly as much as modifying, deleting, or creating new. What's dragging me down is no reviews. So we have plays that have become stagnant over the week. So either they're no longer relevant, and the play owner should be archiving them, or we need to be reviewing them and make sure they don't need change. Moving up once more, we're heading into the C-suite view. As a C-suite member, you're presented with the overall GCS. Very similar to the department view, we want to take a look at what's driving our GCS up or down. I can click in and look individually what changes need to be, or what changes were made to the system to affect my current GCS, which allows me to target by department or individual how I want to make those changes. We talked a little bit about how playbook impacts our scores, how people impact our scores, but our quarterly review is the third component. So when we kick off in a work software account, the first thing we do is look at the previous 8 quarters of revenue, cash flow, and profit. So we kind of have a starting line of where work software begins. And then we may or may not have VCR defined at that point. Assuming we don't, we encourage that. So adding VCR, defining VCR within the application actually adds to your performance score, as well as doing things like attaching a revenue recognition policy or addition and counting policies. Other than that, we look back quarterly for changes, positively or negatively percentage increases in either one of these categories to impact our performance scores. The last component we'll talk through is the CEO map. The CEO map is a little bit different than an employee map in the idea that the CEO is responsible for more of the state of the union of the business. So a report on the mindset, ability, and performance of the business as a whole. And if the board is enabled, the board will do a counter map. So the board works as the manager map to the CEO map, with the opportunity of each board member to submit their own map and impact plan, which is the counterbalance to the CEO map. That's where I will leave it.
All right, so let's take questions from our audience here about anything that you've seen here today, the design of the software, how it works, and how in the world David is one of the two examples of a business that closed at a number higher than the LOI. I only know two. David is one of those two. So,
well, I can tell you, Tom, one of the nuggets that we put in the software intentionally because of that was obviously the plays are a big portion of that, making certain you understand what the main drivers are in your business. But those little things that Wil went over, like understanding your VCR, but most importantly, your revenue recognition policy. That was one of the things that really amazed me during the due diligence process, that making certain that you had a revenue recognition policy that was GAAP compliant saved us an awful lot when it came time to exit.
Oh yeah. Yeah. In fact, that's one of the questions that we ask, of course, during our assessment of a business. There are so many businesses that have poor revenue recognition policies, and therefore their financial statements are no longer reliable. So it's interesting that you all added that as a component of the Work.Software of the overall score of the business. I really like that, because people don't realize how very important that is to transitioning the business.
Yeah, and it was an eye-opener for us, because it really helped us recognize other revenue streams that we could convert into higher producing revenue streams. Like for us, we had content creation, so moving that into more of a subscription model gave us a few more extra $1 million at exit. So it made all the difference in the world, but it would have never happened if we hadn't gone through the exercise of going through revenue recognition.
A few million here, a few million there, after a while it adds up.
It does. Well, and the other little thing, like making certain that your employees understood what the value creation revenue was, opened them up for being really, really, really great contributors to our business. I mean, that was huge for us. Where we probably never would have had the conversation with some of the sales folks, but once they understood the pieces of revenue that made the most difference, they ended up changing their pitch and ended up closing more of the MRR that they once would have given away to just professional services or one-time fees.
So how hard was it for you guys to come up with your VCR? I mean, I love that term. That is now a permanent part of my vocabulary as I work with our clients. I've always understood that concept, but I love you guys created a term for it, the VCR. How difficult was it for you and your business to come up with that VCR?
Well, it was getting our arms around what the market was doing. In the early years, especially we were a SaaS company, and it was ASP before that, right? So everybody, it seemed like EBITDA was a big thing, and selling on a multiple of EBITDA made the most sense. It wasn't until later in the years that all of a sudden a multiple of revenue started to play out in the SaaS environment, and so we recognized very quickly if we were going to be sold, where the true values were. So we figured out who would be our targets. It was going to be private equity. It was going to be a strategic. How are they typically completing transactions, which led us to, okay, it is going to be a multiple, but it's going to be a multiple of the reoccurring business. And so that's what led us over to to figuring out it was going to be monthly reoccurring revenue. But those are the key things to have a conversation about years before you decide to sell, because then you can do the necessary things, whether it's how you report revenue so that it's more attractive to the buyer, as well as how to focus the team on going to get more of that revenue.
It sounds easy enough, but it was amazing. Like, it took us quite a while to wrap a term around it that made us feel comfortable sharing it with the team. Again, it was one thing again to suggest, we're growing the business on reoccurring revenue, but how do we actually articulate that for them? And it was something, again, we learned over doing this for 14 years. We kept it too close to our vest for too long, and really explaining it to our individual contributors on how best to monetize it for us.
And that is so very important. It's one of these things that, as you guys know, when because I've shared this story with you, and most of the folks in our audience today understand this, I have never been shy about telling a business, after I've acquired a business, telling all the employees that I am not going to be the last owner of this business. And that it will eventually transition either positively or negatively. And as the folks help us achieve the goals that we hope to achieve, everybody will receive rewards along the way, right? And so I've never been shy. Every business on the planet is going to transition. Most business owners don't talk about that. What I love about this system is it gives you a way to talk about that without really talking about the exit strategy, right? You're talking about the things that are important. And it's so, by the way, it's important for our group on here to know, and I think most of the people understand that most businesses don't sell on a revenue or recurring revenue basis. Something along the lines of 97% of all transactions are based on earnings. So earnings are still very important. But this gives you a way to drive even both of those things, right? You can drive the recurring revenue, and you can, if that's your VCR, you can drive the bottom line at the same time. And so I love what you guys have done. I've asked lots of questions. What do we have? Nobody, I don't think, typed in any questions in the chat panel, because I neglected to actually give that instruction at the beginning. But most of you guys, come on, we've been Zooming for the last year and a half. Everybody knows if you have a question, you can type it in the Zoom. However, if you have a question, just open up your mic and let's hear your questions. Michael, I know you have a question. Formerly Kelly Byzantine. Now
Kelly.
Yes.
Hey, I'm kind of like Prince. I'm just evolving. Okay. So on your CEO map, Wil, you were showing us, and I know we have a meeting later, so I'm talking with you in more detail. You talked about playbook, people, and performance. Does that tie then back to your goal of accountability and strategy, or you may have to show your screen again, but I wrote that down. I had a CEO map and it said playbook, people, and performance. I think it had a grade or a numeric there, and I'm just trying to see, how does that tie back to, what is that? There you go.
So these are
right above the graph. Yeah.
These are the three pillars when Dave walks through kind of the action-based framework. So we talk about goals and performance, we talk about accountability and people, and we talk about strategies and plays. So from a C-suite point of view, it's a culmination of everyone in the business. So we have a calculation of all the people scores, all the playbook activity, and then finally the goals or the quarterly performance numbers. But each one of these really is attached to a key non-financial metric. So our financials are really the check and balance in the system, where we have our daily activity, our weekly activity, our monthly activity. And then when we come around to quarterly, if we've course corrected along the way, we expect performance to be growing up and to the right. That's kind of the benefit of the action-based framework, is we're staying ahead of this reporting. So this is really the culmination or the confirmation that these two things have been done correctly over the last 3 months.
And do I have a relative? So going on that, so that's helpful. Things. Do I have a relative? So 111.3 to me means nothing, obviously. But is that? Do I have a? I mean, once I click into it, I guess I'm just trying to understand. Does green mean it's doing good, and it should be 115 out of 111, or 111 out of 115, or help me understand the relative performance metrics, how that looks like it. Can I just see it from the dashboard, or do I have to drill in?
Yeah, well, you can drill in, of course, and again, we have a little bit of reporting from a playbook activity on the dashboard itself. what we're looking at is kind of the activity right here. So whose plays are getting the most cycles in the business. But really what we're looking for is continued growth. So there is no real, like we'll call it a market cap for lack of a better term in our world, but there is no cap to where GCS can go. What we're looking for is continued growth. So if you're looking for this to grow quarter over quarter, or you're looking at the transitions, you just want to see it getting better than where it was before. So when I look at my people as a whole, I'm looking, am I going green or am I going red? Is my people score moving up or is it heading down? If it's heading down, I want to drill in and say, where are my problem children in this particular, or this sector I'm looking at company wide? Problem children can be defined by looking at your grades or checking out the deltas. The deltas are the differences between the manager assessment and the self-assessment. So this can tell you a lot about how their alignment is. Finally, we can drill down and say, okay, well, let me look at impact plans. Who's hitting their impact plans and who's not? So we're starting to get a little bit of picture of the people who are having trouble contributing to the business. And that can help the CEOs or the C-suite talk to their direct reports to start shaping up the departments.
Yeah, I think that the interesting thing here, Michael, that is, it makes action-based performance a little different, and at times it's not palatable to everybody, is there's number one, never a finish line, and number two, there's never 100%. There is always room for improvement, and there's always places in the business to work on improving. We were extreme micromanagers at our business. We we're constantly trying to figure out what's next, but this system really promotes that continued growth. And what we found over time was where we fell down was taking the vision of the company and being able to articulate that to the career trajectory of every employee. And that's what the action-based performance allowed us to do. So then all of a sudden, you've erased all the ceilings that your employees can actually hit. And so all of a sudden, everything is moving, if you're doing it right, a lot faster than what you can project. In the later years, we stopped creating budgets and forecasts because they just got blown out of the water. So we realized, like, as long as we were very good at waiting on the employees, meaning getting them the things they needed to continue to grow, they far exceeded our expectations. It was a complete change in mind, where a lot of companies, they build a forecast and everything is going to that forecast. Well, if you just work on getting crap out of employees' ways, out of their way, you give them, I always say simplicity comes from frequency and clarity. And if you work on those two things, you'll get the wrong people out of your organization. You'll put the right ones in. And if you give those people everything they need to succeed, they'll far exceed anything that you can forecast.
Okay. And then obviously being a SaaS model, obviously desktop, multiple. I mean, is there a limit on the number of how many access points you can have per user? How does that work as far as accessing this? I guess you can do it anywhere.
No, yeah, it's SaaS-based, so browser-based. We have two tiers, essentially. One is we call the leadership model, which is direct reports to the CEO, basically a one-department view of Work.Software, and then a full company or enterprise deployment. So they're priced accordingly. The leadership model is $600 a month, and the enterprise model is $1,000 a month. No limit to the users on the enterprise model. Actually, no limit to users in either scenario. We just limit departments.
Okay. And in security, touch on that a little bit.
As far as compliance?
Compliance and just, obviously I know SaaS is as secure as it will be, but I mean, what do y'all do to ensure the data is just safe? I mean, encrypting, et cetera, but yeah, both sides.
Yep, encrypted in transit, encrypted at rest. It's an AWS platform. We back up to Azure as far as business or disaster recovery. We lived in the SOC audit world for, I want to say, 7 years in our prior business. So all the principles we brought to the application are reflected in our development strategy, and also part of the mentality of Work.Software as well. We envision this being a excellent tool as far as compliance and audit history. So when you look at how you can leverage it for your own company to explain how disaster recovery is reviewed and documented, business continuity, things along those lines. So all those same principles are followed over here.
Well, you want to touch on contributors too, since we're kind of talking about audits and third parties?
Absolutely. So when you work in the system itself, a play, you can be an owner, you can be assigned a play, so you can actually work a play. There's a role in the system called contributor, where you can influence the play, you can make comments, you can access it, but you're not actually falling into the employee components of the application. So as an advisor or as a business coach, you can work as a contributor model to help the spiral evaluation without actually muddying up the grading system.
So that would be like if you wanted to outsource, either like you said, consultant, or i.e., you outsource some component of it and you're managing. I'll leave it at that. But it sounds like you could do that without affecting scores, but you at least track progress, et cetera.
Absolutely. One example that hits home for me is when we worked with third-party auditors for our SOC audits, I could give them contributor access to just that, our business continuity. So if I had questions or we wanted to see refinements, or on the flip side, where they gave us a template to start and say, in our system, it's called a sketch, but here's a sketch for business continuity. It's a very generic version, but you're going to bring it in as a play. And through spiral evaluation, your team will tweak it to make it your own. So you're going to start by just customizing the little things that make it unique to you. And then over time, as you actually test your business continuity, you would refine the play, and your contributors would be able to work on that as well.
All right, thanks.
And then
Dave, I have a question about, go ahead.
Sure. No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
This is Dave. I have a question about, the word play comes up a lot, and it's a new use of that word for some other things. Can you give some examples of a play?
Yeah, I'll give you a great one that really helped me a lot. So, one of the things that we did when we started to get, let's say, above 5 million is where we started to have some significant issues with, again, we were wonderful micromanagers, but there's a point in your business that grows where you can't get your hands quite as far into the business as you want. And so you kind of have to give up some control and create some processes in place. So the first place we went was EOS, which really helped us with creating milestones and having a weekly meeting. It really, really helped us as a management team hone in. Where we ran into some trouble is all of our departments were off track without the ability to get on track. And so that's where the whole concept of a playbook or plays were driven. We, for a very short period of time, went in almost the opposite direction. We went into something called Process Street, which required every process in our system to be documented to the point where everybody just built workarounds because no one wanted to go back and revise the process because it was just too laborious. So we needed something that helped our employees get on track and created clarity when they had questions. So the idea of putting a process in place that allowed for what we call a spiral evaluation. So for instance, you may have a great sales team, and I had a really great account management team. To document how to process an order through our system would have been insulting to them. However, they were consistently missing having the opportunity in our CRM match the purchase order that came over. And then something very innocent that they would forget all the time was who the accounting contact was over at the customer location. So my finance department would freak out every time they have to call on a receivable because they didn't have all the information they needed. So in the play for order processing, I only put the blind spots in. So we defined the what and why we're doing it. The how was really just the pieces that the employees were unclear on. And so it helped very easily to be able to say to the team, no longer are we going to forget to make sure that the purchase order matches the opportunity in our CRM because we've now defined the play. We all understand it. If we have to come back to it, we know we have a problem. So that's, I think, the difference in how we handle plays is they are your processes, but it's only the processes that you have trouble with. Where we notice people misinterpret how Work.Software goes down is they either think it's really going to be too laborious that they can't do, or they go into this mode where they want to define every single one of their processes. And again, what we're doing is this is all about action-based performance and moving up and to the right. We only want to address the problems. We don't want to address the things that are going right. There's no reason to define a process any farther than you need to. So that's where that spiral evaluation really has value. So a play it really comes down to the processes that you're having the most difficulty with.
So it's just the you sort of take the cream off the top of the issues that are most significant. Those become the play.
That's right, David. Like you've probably been in meetings where there's nothing in the weekly stand-up, or let's say a management meeting, where there's always the same problem that always pops up, but it never gets addressed, right? It's that one that just always is there. That's where Work.Software really shines, because now all of a sudden you say, well, then let's create a play. And I, as the play creator, I don't need to know all of the inner workings of that play. I just need to give it life. The idea that we're bringing in collaboration into processes now is what really gets that clarity going. Because what you'll find in any organization is the manager thinks people are doing it this way. All the people are doing it this way. And somewhere in the middle is probably the way it needs to go down. And so having the collaboration and the ability for people to voice their opinions gives you the ability to get over the issue very quickly.
Yeah, so a problem just gets converted into a play, and then the play gets worked.
That's right. And you've probably seen it too in your organization. There's some people that have really strong personalities and they dominate the meeting. And you have some really, quieter people that are thinkers that can also contribute very well to these problems. The play gives both of those people a voice, right? So you have the weekly meeting live, but you also have the ability to comment throughout the week on the plays as well. So you get everybody contributing. And in work, we also measure the employee's intensity score based on their participation, whether it's in the meeting or it's outside of the meeting, but it's still about who can help grow the department by contributing to the playbook.
And so a play might have a life in the business of 4 to 6 weeks. It sounds like a play gets worked through and that gets replaced by a new play.
That's right. We call it archiving. For instance, we've seen some of our clients using the tool for onboarding a new client or a new employee. And if they don't do a lot of hiring, they can archive the playbook for new hires and then bring it back out of the archive when a new employee comes on board.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yep.
I like it. I had a question from someone sent over to me. It says, talk about the implementation and customization of the software. How much time does it take? What are the inside resources that are needed, outside resources, that kind of thing?
So the onboarding can be as aggressive as you choose to do it. When we initially set out the application, we chose to take this kind of over a 3 to 4 month period, where we start with the C-suite, the CEO first, and then working down to the direct reports. We define the first department we want to roll into the application, and each of them follow suit. So we introduce the CEO to the map process. We introduce the CEO to the IIP process, and ultimately the plays. And then we do the same with the direct reports. Essentially, when we define the CEO's direct reports, we have department number 1 defined. And we go through that same process of maps, IIPs, plays, and introducing to the next level down in that tier. So because the system is time-based, you really have within any given month before your official maps are due, when you kick off, you're going to get kind of the last month's map as kind of a sketch pad to figure out how complicated or how easy it is to work. And then you're asked again to recontribute 7 business days before the end of the month. Now, depending on how aggressive you want to be with your teams, this can be done within a single month, or it can be spread out over a couple of months. We have folks now who are choosing to do the C-level direct report in month 1, and then introduce to department 2 and 3 in month 2. When we say 3 to 4 months, ideally what we're doing is we want the entire company onboarded before the next financial check-in. So because we take the historicals when we start Work.Software, your last 8 quarters, we're working somewhere between a 3 to 4 month period before that next quarter comes into play. And ideally, we like to have a good rep for every department prior to that so we can see the impact of Work.Software. We do have professional onboarders that can work as part of the implementation team. It's a $2,400 one-time fee for them to onboard the entire company. And again, that the schedule can be as aggressive as needed, but typically between 1 and 2 months.
Awesome. What other questions do we have?
Do you guys, well, first of all, Dave and Will, thanks a lot for the presentation. It's a very interesting software. Congratulations on your exit. It sounds like a great story. Tom, that probably should have been the subject of your meeting today.
Yes.
But do you guys have implementation? What types of companies have you implemented this software with? I assume obviously a lot of SaaS type companies, but what other industries are you touching?
Yeah, Frank, that's a great question. Obviously, SaaS was easy for us because we have a great story, and everybody's like, I want to do what those guys did. So it was easy, low hanging fruit. There's really been 3 camps that have been able to drive business for us. So the CEOs who are looking to exit are pretty right group for us. We used to say no to manufacturing, although I spent 13 years in manufacturing. We actually now have manufacturing folks on board. The reason we said no to manufacturing or even like a construction is you typically don't have employees who have access to the technology. So it doesn't quite have the same punch that you would get with employees that have access to technology. So that's typically why we kind of shy away from those markets. However, now with the leadership only tool, those groups are just adding those types of people. The other 2 that are driving business our way, which is kind of opened up markets, is coaches and consultants, where what they love about it, especially the fractional folks, is typically they have multiple disciplines. So they have a fractional CFO, a fractional security person, they have a fractional salesperson, but those people don't know how to sell across the organization. And so they're dropping work into the program so that they can see all the blind spots, and it's an easy comment for them to pull through additional fractional services that go outside of the department of their expertise. The last one that seems to have driven the most versatility in market is private equity and VC. So we've run into a variety of private equity fund managers who believe that hitting it out of the park only once is probably not great, even though they can still make money on their fund. And so they're bringing us into their portfolio companies to help those leadership teams execute, as well as for them to be able to see the blind spots. So that's opened up health, that's opened up, like I said, manufacturing. And so we really haven't found an industry that hasn't been able to utilize it. Again, if the employees don't have access to technology, it becomes a tougher sale.
I think there's two drivers when we look at kind of our goal of creating the software, and it's creating value quicker, building it faster. So we're attractive to the CEOs, to the founders, and to the investors. And a view we didn't talk about is the investor view within the application. It allows you to see all of your companies in Work.Software and their GCS scores. So being able to see things like their attachment of the revenue recognition policy or the increase in performance in non-traditional cycles starts telling you a picture of the total package of the business outside of the financial reporting.
Yeah, I would say, Frank, there are 2 markets that we don't like to work in. One is we don't like lifestyle businesses because there's no real exit in mind. And we find that those CEOs at times have trouble entering the pain cave, as we like to call it. So, because it's a lifestyle business, they don't have to do some of the things that they probably should be doing. And then the other one is nonprofits. So we're not a big fan of those folks either, just because we don't really understand their mindset. Not that they aren't great. It just doesn't fit with who we are.
And it's very unlikely that a nonprofit is looking for a big exit.
Right. It all comes down to that pain cave, right? Like Will and I said, this is all about the things that we did right over at Industry Weapon, but it's a lot of the things that we did wrong. And the big thing that I really struggled with was I did a daily dose every day to our organization. They knew without a doubt where my head was and where we were going as a business. But what I did terrible, and I got dinged on the communication on a regular basis, and it didn't really dawn on me until way late, which was I wasn't personalizing and customizing our company vision to their career trajectory. And that's where the misconception, or that's where the disconnect was. And that's why we wanted to make sure we put the tools in place, the definition of the individual impact plan, the way it is in our system, the same thing with the map. That was built 100% to solve that problem. And I think we all as leaders don't realize that, especially nowadays, it's all about them, right? And if you can't personalize and customize your vision for the company to their selfish interests, it creates problems.
Totally. It's really funny. A lot of CEOs don't really connect the dots on that. When you hear over and over, what's the number one issue in our business? It's communication, right? It's communication. They don't tell us enough. It's not. So what do? We create a newsletter. We do a daily dose. We go and hold town hall meetings. We are in front of them every chance we get. We send them an email twice a week, whatever it is. It has not, the lack of communication has nothing to do with what you're telling your people. It's how do you personalize it for me? And this software does that to a really a brilliant level. This has been so fun. Frank, I love your idea. Perhaps what we're going to do is host another conversation with David and Wil about specifically their exit, and talk about exit stories and that kind of thing. Kim has put in the chat the fastest and easiest way to get in touch with these guys, and that is just go to their website, which is Work.Software. So www.work.software. One more question here from Gerald. What is this? Gerald, do you want to open your microphone and ask it, and then we're going to call it a day?
Sure. I was just wondering, in the individual impact plans and how they differ for employees versus managers, the true north metrics and the action, did you find those to be more activity-based focused or more results-oriented?
I'll grab that, Dave. So as a manager, your impact plan is yours and yours alone. So really it comes down to, where did you need the most help from the previous month moving forward? So if that is help in your department, that's the direction you're going to get from your manager, and how you refine that is up to the two of you to coordinate. As an individual contributor, you're really focusing on your day-to-day work. But as a manager, one of the reasons why this system is to be, and Dave said if we did a lot of things right, a lot of things wrong, is we promoted a lot of individual performers in our business. They were great contributors, but they lacked kind of the managerial background. And that's where we see the impact plans having the biggest work in Work.Software, is being able to help them guide that along and become a manager when they're really, the day-to-day is their individual performance. The managerial is kind of a layer on top of that, and we're helping them through that with work.
Well, and I'll add a little bit to that, Gerald. It also helps the manager. When we're talking about a manager specifically, it's helping them prioritize, and that's where we saw their growth. It tended to slow down. And our idea here is, when you get to that annual evaluation, right, whether it's compensation review and compliance, that you're now bringing to the table 12 months of your maps with your manager, and 12 months of individual impact plans that are highlighting your ability to execute the strategies of the business. So they're going to ebb and flow at times, depending on who the right people are. What was really amazing to me is some of the people in an organization that don't see their business or their part of the business contributing to the goals, contributing to profit and cash flow and revenue. And when you really are able to dig into that and show them where they are an asset in the organization, that's typically where we see managers getting tripped up with their teams, is not being able to really concretely say where they think that employee can get better, and how they can actually measure that continued performance. And so when you think about the individual impact plan, at times people think immediately with sales, right? Oh, it's all about them closing more business. Well, sometimes it's having more calls, or being better at being able to book those calls. The key is it's got to be a metric that they can affect on their own, and it has to be able to help their career path. It's not going to replace all the other things that they're supposed to do. It's, again, having that idea that we're working on helping them grow in their career as well as contribute to the business.
Awesome. With that, folks, we're over time here. So thank you all for coming. Just sharing this slide with you to tell you that we are cooking up some pretty cool things for the fall. Stay tuned. If you have not signed up on our website, on our LinkedIn, subscribe to us on our YouTube channel or whatever, then go do that, because you don't want to miss the really cool things that are coming from Mastery Partners coming in the fall. David, Wil, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing this really cool software with us. I'm going to have you back again, and we're going to talk about the industry weapon store.